Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach.
And I'm Pepper.
And today we're going to give our first impressions on Tekhenu, I believe it is, Obelisk of the Sun.
I always think it's Obelisk of the Sky, but it is Sun.
Yeah, I could see it being both. I never fully remember what it is. I know it's Obelisk of something.
Yes.
We're pretty sure.
So this is our first, actually not our first, endeavor into the T series of games. We did try Zulkin on BGA, Board Game Arena, but it's a little different when you're playing in person, and this is the first one that we played in person.
Right, yeah, the only way we've ever played Zulkin like this is on Board Game Arena, and we played, at least I played one of my games against like some probably professional player. It's just like, wow, it opens up my eyes as to what you could all do in that game, but at the same time, I was like, I feel so lost in this game. And
yeah.
Like you said, I think when you're actually feeling pieces and some or things like that, I think it's a little easier to learn and understand how the things are working. It's a lot easier that way when you're doing it yourself. Versus, especially Board Game Arena, it only allows you to do legal moves and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can't.
And we don't
really
like that. You like
right.
to bend the rules.
Right. So you don't really have room to make those mistakes or realize certain things sometimes. But yeah. So anyway, long talk about Zulkin and a video about Tekhenu. But what were your initial thoughts, or what did you expect out of this game? What were your hoping?
This one stayed on the shelf for quite a while. I forget when we got this.
Was it my birthday from last year, or was it Christmas from last year?
I think it might have been Christmas.
So either way, it was either September.
So
it's either about a year, right about a year, or about 9 months.
Now, when this video comes out, that may be even farther away. But yeah, it took a long time because I was scared to play this game. And the gameplay of Zulkin definitely didn't ease those worries. Because I'm not the biggest fan of heavy games, crunchy games, especially learning them for the first time. So my expectations weren't that high. I thought I was going to have a hard time playing this one.
Yeah, and you probably know what my expectations were, hopes were for this game. I was the one that was always pushing to try to play it, to get someone to play it, and I figured it would end up being you versus Michaela, because I think it's even harder sometimes to get her to play some of the harder new ones, and sometimes I just like to play a game a bit with you first to get to understand some of it, to make it easier to explain it, because she's also not a big fan of learning rules when it's like a lot of rules, a lot of things going on, which this game is for sure. After, but you actually read the rules, which I've kind of gotten lazy. I think the last few games we played, you've done the rules.
I have done those.
It's great sitting back and.
I actually didn't read the rules. I watched a video on the rules.
Okay.
Which, now that we've been spoiled with all kinds of videos, when we find a game that doesn't have a good video on how to play, it hurts, because then you know you have to go through this 30-page rulebook and learn it yourself.
Right. Yeah, you just kind of hope that it's an easier game then.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one had a... What group pages is this?
It was
I don't know if
30,
it's all,
32.
Yeah, it's about 30 pages, but I'm not sure if that's all. There's some solo play stuff in there and whatnot, so
yeah,
probably at least 20 pages.
It's a little intimidating, but I was actually surprisingly the first one of all of us to play this game. I watched a video because he left it back. I was back home and he left this game there for me to learn.
Right.
And I eventually thought I had to, because it was his birthday, and I'm like, I better learn it for him. So I watched some videos and played the game a couple times. I played an official solo variant, and I also played as 2 players. It was a little overwhelming at first, but I think the actions really aren't that complicated. Because the game itself, I guess we should actually talk about how the game plays. You pretty much go to one of these spots and take a die, and take the, 6 spots here around the obelisk, and
Right.
on your turn, you will take one of the dice.
Mhm.
And you can either produce with that die the corresponding resource.
4 different resource types that you can produce it into,
Yeah.
based on the number.
Yeah. Or you can take the section's action, which is actually not that complicated of a system.
Mhm.
Because
Right.
you do really only have 6 options.
Mhm.
So once I kind of got going, it started snowballing a little bit, and you can really get a hang of it
Mhm.
pretty
Yeah,
quickly, I think.
Yeah, and because I definitely thought that because you, like you said, you had played it a couple times before I was able to, kind of beginner games
Yeah.
or not beginner games, but first games.
Yeah.
And I felt like when you taught me kind of what each one did, I thought that went pretty quickly. Like
Yeah.
once you know how it plays, I think it's an easy enough one to teach. There's definitely a lot going on still, but yeah, all the actions themselves all are easy to understand and
Yeah,
comprehend. There's nothing like extremely like difficult about any one action. Like, oh, if I do this, what do I actually get to do? It's all once you kind of know what they do, then you can. They all have these little icons mostly on there. I think The only thing that I would say is sometimes maybe some of the cost stuff wasn't as clear to me, or it not that it's not clear, but I would sometimes forget about that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was the hardest part for me. But otherwise, I think the actions themselves all were quite easy to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you think they all blended together well? Because I wasn't sure. I felt like it almost felt like I was playing a few different games on one game. It didn't.
Yes. It feels like a 6-layer cake, with every layer being a different flavor.
Right.
Maybe not 6, but I feel like there's kind of a couple areas that kind of mesh together well with each other. Like here you can place your columns over in this, I forget what that area is called, but this section. And you can also place your buildings, and they kind of score points for lining up with each other. So those two actions kind of go together pretty well. Then you can kind of increase your happiness and population with this action, and also get the cards, which require those two things.
Right. Those two kind of go together.
So
That one up there kind of goes potentially with everything, because you can put your statues out in the middle here, or you can use them over there or over here. But the fact that you can kind of put those statues down in order to, whenever someone takes an action, you get a bonus. That one kind of interacts with a little bit of everything. I felt like.
Yeah.
Some a little bit more than others, like this one and that one. But
Yeah, it definitely felt like a different game. Each of those type sections. This one's more like a tile placement, trying to line your things up, and other things are more trying to maybe get a little bit of an engine of cards and different special abilities, and a lot of different flavors, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think I liked how they all worked, though, as well. But I would say at the same time, it didn't feel like I got enough of any of the things. Because, one of the things that I was trying to do, so I'd kind of misread my goal card, and I thought that I basically just had to fill in the tiles here, so that I thought it was the columns and then the buildings on the edges that can allow you to score points based on your columns in there, and also allow you to get some resources there as well. I thought it was those two things, but it was actually just statues and my buildings around there. So
you could have built your statues anywhere.
Right. I could have built my statues anywhere. I just, for some reason, I thought that it was everything in that area, so I was kind of playing that wrong until I asked Jesse about, 3/4 of the way through the game. I said something to him, just showing him what my card was. So I was like, I can't really do anything else outside of trying to do this. And then he noticed that it said statues, and I'm like, shoot, I'm not. I had 5 or 6 of the columns out there. So I'm like, well, those aren't, not that they weren't scoring me any points, but they weren't scoring me what I thought they were going to score me at the end. And then it it was kind of sucky because I could have, gotten some statues because you ended up
Yeah,
getting all
ended
the
up
spots.
getting all of my statues out here. So you go over there, you take a die, and that corresponding die goes to one of these areas, and you can actually change which areas they go to with these tiles every game. But I was able to get all of my statues out, so that whenever anyone went there, I would get the corresponding bonus every time.
Yeah, so I would have definitely tried to get a couple of those myself, and I was originally planning on getting the one that got me food, because I needed food for the buildings on that one, so I thought, well, if I can get that, then that'll help me increase kind of the food that I'm getting, by at least a little bit, I don't think that gets you so much that you're going to be set in anything, but it just gives you that little bit of extra bonus that can possibly help you out.
It really helped me because I feel like sometimes in these games I can get to a point where I finally get my resources and then I just spend them all and I start over with nothing. But this really helped to ease that, so I kind of always had something to use.
But yeah, you ended up taking. That was like the first one you took was the one that that I was thinking of getting, and then at that point I was like, well, I got to focus my efforts on these other things because the cost was so high, and that was part of the reason. Well, I said too, I didn't feel like I got to do as much as I wanted, because I really wanted to put a bunch of those, even though that ended up not really getting me the points that I wanted, because of, like I said, that end game card wasn't what I thought it was, but I was I still felt like I wanted to get more of those out. I don't think maybe it was only 4 or 5, because I felt like I still had a decent amount of the columns left, and I'm like, those are just so expensive, it's so hard to get that much stuff.
4 whites.
4 of the white cubes, which takes quite a bit to get that.
Just to produce it,
you also need
unless you get these cards, which I had a pretty good production turn once, but we'll get to that. But to produce it, you have to take your whole turn to take one of those colored dice to produce that resource.
Right.
And you have to have your production up that far to be able to take that many.
Right.
So it can be tough to get those.
It can be difficult to get resources, for sure. Yeah. So that's why I felt like I just kind of didn't get to quite do as much as I wanted, because this is a very, very tight game. I'd compare it somewhat to Pulsar 2849, the way you're taking 2 dice and Grand Austria Hotel.
Yeah. This
is a very similar thing to that, where you're taking 2 dice each round and doing specific actions. Not necessarily. I mean, it's different. It's quite a bit different, but that's kind of what I'm in my head comparing it to a little bit, but it kind of works like that, where you take 2 and then you end up doing that twice to have 4 on your board. But yeah, I felt like I didn't really want to waste those to produce, and then too, when you're producing, it's like, well, if I'm gonna waste a turn, or not waste a turn, but use a turn to do that, I want to make sure that I'm getting a lot of resources out of that. Like you said, if you didn't have this high enough, then you really aren't getting that much out of the dice.
And I would say probably with my experience with the game, I was able to spot some good cards to go by. I got 3 or 4 production cards, so that when I did produce, I could cash all of those in, and I believe I got 4 of one resource, 4 of another, 2 gold wild resources, and some scribes, which help you manipulate your dice. So I was able to cash all of those in on one production and pretty much be set for that last third of the game, pretty much.
Right. And I think, well, that's when I'm like, oh gosh, I definitely have lost this game when I all of a sudden saw that my happiness definitely went away after I saw that. But I think you almost ended up doing it. It almost ended up being too late, though, because you didn't really get to use most of what you had, which kind of.
Because you can get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm going to be set for the rest of the game. I'll use up all these resources. I can do anything, and it's like, oh, I only have 4 turns left.
Right.
So half of these are going to go to waste.
Right. Yeah. But I ended up hanging in there. I don't know how. And I wish, I didn't have that experience. Yeah. And to me, it didn't seem that great to take some of those cards, but now looking at it, I could see how that could definitely be useful depending on what you're plan is, and if they're out there, if they give you some of those resources.
Yeah.
I could see how that would definitely be useful. But I also felt like, because I ended up getting, kind of the way you can buy these cards is by getting those happiness and population
it's
of.
split into sections, like you have 3 cards here, 4, 4, and 4, and each of them have a color, and once to access a section, you have to have your little happiness in that corresponding color of this track. And you can't have your happiness exceed your population.
Right.
So you kind of got to move your population up, and then your happiness to be able to access cards farther down the line. Which I don't know if I like having to put that much effort just to get cards.
Right. I don't think because I ended up getting pretty far on the thing,
but nearly to the end.
Yeah, and I still, I don't think it took that much effort, but I kind of got lucky with the dice that allowed me to move them like 5 or 6 times with one roll. But if you're moving it with 3 or less, I think that's going to take a lot of dice in order to get up that track. But I would say once I got there, I wasn't really that happy with the card options that I had.
Because everything that shows up here could show up there except for the endgame scoring cards, which you're not sure that that's even going to be one that you want. But yeah, I had spotted one because I think you finally revealed the last section here, and there was one that I really wanted that let me double or copy a scoring card that I already had, which was get 4 points per statue you have out. So that would have been 24 points. So I'm like, okay, I need to go up there, but I was already way back here.
Way too far back to
so
catch up.
I did make an effort, but I probably shouldn't have because there really was no way for me to get up into that blue section to be able to get that card.
Right, and with the scoring cards too, you weren't allowed to.
You can score 3 total, and none of them can have a matching symbol. Which the symbols pretty much correspond to kind of a section of the game.
Right. So yeah, the one that looked good to me was one that matched my symbol, obviously, and then nothing else really looked that great. So it kind of wasn't that great for me to get up there, but I think I ended up scoring some points off of it.
And the points really aren't that much because I think it's 3 points. Like each section kind of adds another scoring. So if you get into the later area, you can score 3 points per like little pyramid symbols they have here. So you ended up scoring like 9 points, which is not that much.
Right.
If you didn't really get any good cards to go along with it.
Right.
So what do you think of the big part of the game, the obelisk and the spinning? So the obelisk, under it is a rotating circle which has a light area, shaded area, and a dark area, and that determines what dice in those sections are going to be either tainted or pure or forbidden, which you can't even take the forbidden dice, and the tainted and pure dice kind of go on your little scales over here to determine your balance, which pretty much just kind of ends up determining player order in the next rounds, and possibly lose you some points and get you some points at the end of the game as well. But I don't think that really had a huge impact on the game.
Yeah, I don't think
especially if you're kind of not really going for the same thing.
I don't think that really impacted our game. I do like how I don't know that this huge thing was necessary.
Why
to
not?
Kind of turn it. I mean, it gives the game something.
I do like the turning. It is.
I do like how that works, and it does give the game a little bit more of a pop versus because it is a pretty blah board overall, and even the dice are kind of a little blah color. The player colors I do like, but I think that does give it just that little extra that it needs. But at the same time, I don't think it would have been necessary. I think you could have done the same thing with.
Probably not
without
necessary,
it.
But I don't know if I'd play it without it.
No, I mean I wouldn't play without it, but I don't know if it's kind of like the elder tree, and like you said, where sometimes you can't, if I'm sitting here, I can't,
you can't
see,
really see what's behind it.
So, yeah. But otherwise, I do like how those dice, how those work. I think it's an interesting thing.
It's a little bit of upkeep, because every time you do rotate it, you kind of have to look at what dice are tainted now and which are pure, and kind of adjust all of the dice that are out there, which is a little bit of work, but I guess there'd really be no other way to do that. But yeah, I don't know. It was all right. I like it.
I think that's probably the biggest point of the game, or biggest part of the game is how those dice work and how they're going to move. If you don't take the certain dice this time, where are those going to move to? Are they going to be the tainted or the pure dice, or are they going to be, that might not matter as much, but if they're going to be a forbidden dice die the next time, it might be something you're like, well, I should probably use it this time, or else I'm not going to be able to use it for, a few more turns.
Yeah, that does add a little more stretch, something that can kind of really sneak up on you. I think we had that happen a time or two, where we were like, okay, now I'll go get that die. Oh, wait. That's forbidden now. But yeah, I do like it. I don't want to sound negative, but really kind of like points-wise, it doesn't really affect that much. But I do kind of like playing the game that way and trying to get a balance, even if it doesn't affect the game that much.
Yeah, and then the last thing we kind of did in the game too, or once I found out that I needed statues, or they scored me some extra points based on my card. I think it was only 2 points per, so it's not like it was a ton. But also, when you get your statues off, it exponentially grows in points as well, so it's good to get them off. And I think at that point I might have only had one off, and they get kind of cheaper and then more expensive again.
Yeah.
So I think I ended up having like one of the cheapest options as my next one that I didn't end up getting to play because I just hadn't planned to do it.
Yeah.
But I was able to, so in this part of the board, that's the way you're able to upgrade how much you can produce, and you also can get some of those items depending on where you put what dice you pick up, and that also puts some of these buildings out, which these buildings go here, and then up in the corner of the board as well. But I was there's also statues on the top, because ties over here, so each column, there's 4 columns here, and at the end of each during each scoring phase and the end of the game, you score 3 points for whoever has either the majority control, or whoever is tied, whoever has the highest one.
Yep.
And I was actually able, because there's 2 statues here, I ended up getting both those statues out there, and then that ended up getting me control of every single one at the end of the game, which I ended up losing by like 4 or 5 points. So it wouldn't have even been close if I would have gotten those off, because you would have. I think I was maybe winning 1, if even. I might not have even been winning 1.
Yeah.
At most, I was winning 1 before that, so it would have been 9-3. But so it was a pretty big. But yeah, I think you might have been controlling all of them. So I think it was like a 24-point swing or whatever.
Yeah,
so
for
that's
sure.
pretty big.
Yeah. That one, that feels like us kind of. You're just kind of hitting back and forth. I'm taking it. You're taking it. I'm taking it. I do like the competition for that section of scoring, because those do feel like big chunks of points.
It does. Yeah, and definitely since those statues, it's above 2 different columns each, so that's actually pretty big, I think. So next time, I don't know if you'll be looking to try to take one of those at least early on. Because I was thinking, that might not be the worst thing, because like you said, there's 3 times you'd potentially score it. So you could possibly get 6, 12, 18 points if you can keep control of that the whole time. Those 2 columns.
I think it's only 2 times. I think
it might be 2.
Middle and but
still a good amount of points for not that much, and then you also get a gold bar.
So which section are you feeling the most? What do you like the most of this?
I'm usually a person that likes these card things and buying those types of things to get it, like special bonuses or bonus points at the end of the game. End game scoring cards are usually my thing, and it might have just been the way the game played out, but none of them ended up. I think I went there maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
But even though I had them all unlocked for myself, I just didn't really like that one that much for the game. I didn't really get to use the statue thing that much outside of those, so I do like what's happening over there. I wish I could just do a little bit more during the game because it's a lot of that and it's a lot of food, so it's very expensive.
Yeah, I think where this feels like big chunks of points, this feels like a bunch of little bits of points.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, and one for every building there, one for every column there.
And it must be, and I'm assuming because like I said for the statues, I mean if you get them all off, it's 21 points at the end of the game. And even if you get all of the buildings off, which is a combination of here and up there,
you get them all off. That's 10 points, and you have to pay.
You have to pay 2, 4, 6 food, which is a lot. I mean, you have to plan to have 6 food then at the end of the game to pay that. Otherwise, how many points did you lose if you couldn't pay? 3.
I think it's 3 points per
That's
food.
pretty significant. I mean, so that would get rid of pretty much all the points you gain there if you didn't have the food to pay those.
Just feels so much less rewarding than other things. So I think that's I will probably settle into putting a few buildings out here, not too many, maybe some statues, and I don't know if I think that'll probably keep me from going over here much, because it does seem like small amounts of points, and also these tiles that you had to place out there to put your columns out there, you can get a bonus when placing it, but only if that area is in either shaded or white or whatever the background of this tile is. So felt like for kind of a tougher strategy already, you have to actually have the right shading to get the bonus on the tile. That felt like a little too much work for me. So
I like that the most, but
I think I'm gonna kind of go opposite. I do like these yellow cards, which give you abilities. Some of them can seem really game-breaking when I was playing. Like one let me take, I think it was Forbidden Dice. I was like, wow, that's completely changes the game. Maybe I read it wrong. Maybe it was tainted. But, I think that's what it was, and I was like, wow, that's not the kind of ability that I would expect in this type of game. But I think most of all, I do, as you can tell, I got all of my statues out. I do like that section.
I think I'd like
the
that
most.
a little bit more too if I got to actually do it.
and you can get quite a few out before the first scoring. So I think I scored like 10 points in the first scoring, and then 21 in the second one. So unlike the buildings, you really can't get that many points that early. Otherwise, if you do, you're going to be paying a ton of food.
Right.
I just feel like the statues may be a little overpowered.
Yeah. It'd definitely take more plays of it to see.
In my hands, at least.
Wow. This guy. So, after all of that. What is your initial rating of the game, and what is your desire to play it again, get it to the table?
I feel like this is a trick. It's already set up. It's trying to get me to play the game. No. It did exceed expectations, which were low, but I did find it smoother than I ever thought it would be. So if I had to give it a rating, our initial thoughts rating, that would probably be an 8, I would say. Maybe even an 8.25. And yeah, I think I'd be up to play it.
Nice.
Maybe once a quarter of a year. Once a season.
Wow. So a little higher than what I would rate it.
Wow.
I am coming in with probably a 7 to 7.5 range. So not bad. I think it's got room to grow. I definitely have to play it a few more times to kind of see, like you said, some of it feels maybe possibly overpowered, but I don't know for sure. And, maybe the cards will be a little better. And if I play some statues right away, it could change the whole outcome of the game. So it could definitely grow from there. But right now, I would say I would definitely want to give it more plays. It's not a game that I'm like, I don't think I want to play that one for a while. It's definitely one that I want to try more to see kind of where my final rating would fall. But yeah, right as of right now, it's kind of one of those games where it's like, if someone wants to play it or whatever, wants to take it out, I would do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's crazy. I guess
I would not have guessed that.
I guess I like Tekhenu more than you do.
As of right now, maybe. Maybe my 7 is a little more generous than yours. I don't know. Who knows?
This is crazy. Who would have seen it coming?
No one.
Not me.
But yeah, I think that's our initial thoughts on that.
Our first impressions. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, let us know what you think of the game. Do you enjoy it? Have you played it a ton of times? Is it worth that replayability, or is it kind of one of those where maybe that corner of the map is, more powerful than the other?
Possibly. What is your favorite game in this series of games?
T-series.
We picked this one because it's the only one we can pronounce.
But we're going to try some other ones, maybe. But otherwise, we will hope to see you next time. And don't forget to
keep on nibbling.